Haniel is an A-rank Psyche buffer who deals a non-negligible amount of damage, and she specializes in providing attack buffs, some crit damage and off-field attacks to the team. Welcome! I am Rivyn Elowen, but you may call me Rivy, and this is your complete guide to NTE's most ecstatic girl, Haniel. Haniel features a 5-part basic attack, and unless you're interested in playing her as a main DPS on field, we will not use most of them but her basic one because we will be forced to. Holding down her basic attack during her basic one will have Haniel charge up her paranormal cannon, and while this does not look very strong on paper, this attack can ricochet, hitting multiple times. Haniel also features a plunge attack that does what we expect it to do, and we will never use it, as well as a dodge counter referred to as a critical riposte in this game. Pressing her basic attack right after a perfect dodge will have her perform said critical riposte, and aside from doing what we would expect it to do, it will also automatically cast her paranormal cannon once right after. Haniel's first passive skill enhances the Esper Cycle Nova when triggered, draining 4% of her base attack from the target's attack that Nova was triggered on, and granting 8% of her base attack to the team. The drain cannot exceed 20% of the target's attack, and the buff is kept at 16% of Haniel's base attack. This attack buff lasts up until combat ends, which means triggering Nova twice grants the maximum buff duration. Due to the buff being effectively 5 seconds delayed, as that is the time it takes until Nova triggers, the earlier you trigger Nova into combat, the more use you gain from this passive. As a side note, because Nova requires a Chaos Esper, Haniel fully loses access to her first passive without a Daffodil in the team, as Daffo is, at least as of right now, the only Chaos character in the game. As for her second passive, whenever Ensemble is triggered, she gains 1 stack of plot armor. Each stack increases the ricochet cap of her paranormal cannon by 1 up to 4 stacks, and she gains 2 stacks instead while buffed by her ultimate. More on that in just a bit. First, let's talk about her skill, which is what her entire playstyle revolves around. Casting it will deploy Hootie on the field for 8 seconds, that is this cute little guy, granting an attack buff to the team equal to up to 20% of her base attack depending on the skill level. Base attack refers to Haniel's initial attack she gains from leveling her to 80, as well as the attack gained from her equipped weapon, and it does not include any attack percent or flat attack main or substats or any attack buffs she might have. Or in other words, it is this white number here on the screen. This attack buff lasts for as long as Hootie is on the field. Hootie remains on the field even when Haniel is swapped out, and if the current active character attacks, Hootie will accumulate 1 stack of 4-part harmony up to once every 0.5 seconds. Every 4 stacks accumulated will consume 4 stacks to unleash an AoE attack called Ensemble, dealing psyche damage to all enemies around Hootie. As a small side note, Hootie does not remain stationary after the initial cast and will also follow bosses around, which is great as it means Haniel works well versus highly mobile bosses as well. Haniel's ultimate costs 120 energy, deals a fair chunk of initial damage, grants her the paranormal ace buff for 10 seconds, and will also grant an attack buff to the team equal to, again, up to 20% of her base attack for said 10 seconds duration. This attack buff is separate from her skill and they hence can stack. While in this paranormal ace state, Hootie's cooldown is paused, and whenever Hootie triggers Ensemble, 1 additional Ensemble Symphony will be triggered. Ensemble Symphony is basically just an additional ensemble, except that it will not grant a stack of plot armor. Additionally, while her ultimate is active, triggering Ensemble causes the current active character's next attack to deal additional damage. Additional damage is a flat additive based on the owning character, meaning the damage is calculated using Haniel's stats and added at the end of the damage formula as a flat number. Lastly, Haniel's support skill does damage, and that's about it, but we will need it to trigger Nova, I guess. Haniel is first and foremost a buffer with off-field damage capabilities, and because all of that is allocated in her first passive, skill and ultimate, those have priority. Focus first and foremost on her ultimate, skill and her first passive skill, followed by her second passive, and lastly her support skill and basics. Haniel is very simple to play, so this section will be short. We cast her skill, then her ultimate, optionally press and hold basic once and switch out. To make optimal use of her cannon, we ideally want to use her held basic once for additional energy and cycle gauge generation, as well as inflicting some additional break. Her Awakening 1 increases her ricochet and plot armor limit to 6, her A2 increases Hootie's duration by 4 seconds, and her A6 decreases her skill's cooldown by 4 seconds. Because her entire game plan revolves around having a permanent uptime on Hootie as much as possible, her A2 and A6 are her most important awakenings and should be unlocked first. Her A3 grants her an additional 20% crit rate during the ultimate state, and her A5 grants 30% psyche damage instead during said state as well. Because Hootie's damage is based on her own stats, those are not bad awakenings either, but they also have at maximum a 50% uptime, and that would be assuming that you actually cast her ultimate on cooldown. Lastly, her A4 is primarily useful for main DPS Haniel and should be unlocked last unless you want to play her as such. Focus on unlocking her A2 and A6 first and foremost, then her A3 and A5, and lastly her A1 and A4. Unlocking 3 awakenings increases her abilities level and hence also the amount of attack buffs she grants, and unlocking all 6 will grant an additional 12% crit damage to the team during her ultimate state. Most people skip right here, so hi, welcome! I hope you have a great day and my calculations will help you out. If you are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Statistically, there's a good chance you are not yet subscribed. Thank you. I love you. Haniel is a solid aligned arc wearer, and so her best in slot is her signature, Blow Up the Crowd, perfectly tailored to her playstyles, granting additional attack buffs to the active character while she is off field and a psyche damage bonus to herself when on fielded. You can obtain this weapon once for free the first time you defeat the Rivyn boss, so I would recommend doing so, and because the weapon is literally free to obtain very early into the game within the first few hours, I would not recommend any other weapons on her. Because a lot of her buffs and damage are tied to her ultimate state, Haniel appreciates charge efficiency a lot, and that makes Speedy Hedgehog her best choice. The set will also further grant even more attack to the team after casting her ultimate, so the set does play nicely in tandem with her playstyle. If you intend on playing her as a main DPS, or if another character is already wielding Speedy Hedgehog, such as your MC, Devil's Blood Curse, or even Fireflies and the Forest will work, but with the latter requiring an anima on-field DPS such as Mint or Nanali to maintain. Both crit rate and psyche damage will work well as a main stat on your cartridge, with a crit rate being the preferred choice, if you have her A5 that is. Frankly, it does not matter all too much, so choose whatever has better substats. Haniel has a Type 3 specialization, granting a 10% attack for each Type 3 module equipped. Because she already grants so much attack to the team, we will run into somewhat diminishing returns on attack as a stat for herself, but on the other hand, because we can equip 6 Type 3 modules when running Speedy Hedgehog, this will result in a massive 60% attack as well. As for our substats, focus on crit values and damage bonus substats first and foremost, then attack percent or break intensity. This is also true for our cartridge substats, well, just with higher numbers. Haniel is a primary support choice for basically any team and will work well in all of them, even without Daffodil and her first passive. Hence, these are just a few examples of the teams you can build and not the only ones. She does well with MC and either of Mint or Nanali in an Anima Hypercarry team, with Daffodil providing the necessary chaos element for Nova as well as break damage. Haniel is also a premium choice in Hathor or Skier hypercarry teams, utilizing Haniel for the Stain Esper cycle as well as Jiuyuan and MC for Blossom and charge generation. If you want to play Aurelia, Haniel will pair well with her, Daffodil and Hathor as well, with Hathor this time functioning as a burst sub-DPS and giving access to Stain. Haniel will also do well in an Incantation DOT team with Baizhang, with either of Sakedi or Adler for more buffs in the last slot, or Ji-Yuan providing additional damage and access to Hexed. Haniel is a free and a very generic buffer that fits into virtually every team. She is easy to build since she does not need many great substats to do her job, and at least in terms of skill investment she is rather cheap as well, as we only really need to level her skill, ultimate and unlock her first passive. On the other hand, because she scales off her base attack, we do want to fully max out her character and arc levels, making her more expensive on that side. Her best in slot weapon is free as well, and when invested into, she is at least as of the game's release, one of the best units in the game. Unless you don't have Daffodil or want to play a dedicated DOT team, in which case she is outclassed by Sakiri. But you can also play them together, so hey. Lastly, because she is an A rank, she is however also likely to be outclassed rather sooner than later by a similar premium support. And with that, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a comment on your thoughts about Haniel and to join the Discord. A special thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members who make this content possible. I appreciate all of you and wish you a great day. Peace!